On today's episode of Motorhouse, it's complete
Honda からシティ誕生
Honda madness! Hello everyone and welcome to Motorhouse, and today's episode of Motorhouse is a very special one for a couple of reasons. Firstly, we have two awesome classic Hondas, and secondly, I'd love to introduce you properly and formally for the first time to the wonderful Ratchet.
Hello everyone.
Say hello, Ratchet.
Hello, I'm Rachel, or Ratchet.
Rachel Ratchet Gordon, my wonderful girlfriend here, who you will have seen doing the spannering, helping me fix stuff, will be a general feature on the channel, but today really is your video. This is very Ratchet centric, because today we're going to talk about specifically 80s and 90s Hondas. Like, what's the big deal with Hondas, right? Because they're just shopping cars, right? They're just shopping cars, and why would anyone pay the sums of money people are paying? What's the big deal? I'm playing devil's advocate on this. These are awesome cars, but it's better that you hear it from someone who has spent basically all of their adult life working on them. How many Civics have you owned?
Which is now fast approaching 20 years of owning Hondas. I've probably owned, coming on for about 30 Civics.
That's just Civics. That's just Civics.
Mainly like 5th gen EG shapes.
Yeah.
But I've also owned a 3rd gen and a 2nd gen. I've owned 4 CRXs, 2 1st gens, my beautiful 2nd gen here, and a 3rd gen Del Sol. I've been a big part of the Honda car world for sort of, since the early noughties really.
Why Hondas? You know, it could have been, if you're looking at hot hatches and whatever, it could have been VW Golfs. I've had loads of Golfs, as you well know. Love me a Golf. People were mad about the Peugeots. Then, of course, you've got Fords. I said the F word, sorry. Why cars with this badge? What's special about a Honda compared to any of the ones we've already spoken about?
Well, for me, the levels of engineering that go into each and every Honda, or at least they did in the 80s and 90s.
We'll come back on that, but we're specifically talking about 80s and 90s Hondas at the minute. So when you compare a Honda engine compared to an equivalent engine of the era, let's say typical Golf GTI, which is a 1.8. I'm going to put in here how much power a 1.8 Golf makes. It'll be some power. Comparable
like Civic at the time, which would have been, you know, sort of like what, late 80s, early 90s?
Late 80s, so what, EG?
So you're talking like the EF 4th gen Civic or an EG Civic. You know, a 1.6 engine is developing like 160 horsepower.
It's not forced induction.
Nope.
Okay. Twin overhead cam.
Yep.
1.6.
And of course,
VTEC! If at that era in time you wanted an engine that made 100 bhp per litre, naturally aspirated, you were looking at exotic car stuff, weren't you?
You were.
But Honda were making engines that were making 100 bhp per litre with a warranty.
Yeah, and would give you good gas mileage.
How many mpg?
Sort of high 20s, mid 30s.
High 20s, mid 30s out of a performance car. And the thing is, it's not just the engines, is it? So I got Honda engines before I met Rachel. I went, okay, the engines are awesome, but like, what's the big fascination with these shopping trolleys, right? What makes a Civic of the era stand out against, again, the Golfs, the 205s or whatever?
If you went and bought a top-of-the-range Civic at the time, it had the same double wishbone McPherson strut suspension as the bottom of the range 1.3 did. They had the same. And so you had, you know, maybe slightly different spring rates, but you had, you know, the same suspension setup on it, the same chassis setup on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could go out and buy yourself a 1.3 and enjoy the same kind of handling.
Oh
right?
yeah, definitely.
As a top-end car. And then, of course, for people like you, it meant you could go and buy a clean base spec car.
Yes.
And then develop it into a weapon using all the engines that Honda created. It's something I'm only waking up to, and of course probably about 25 years too late, really.
Pretty much.
Engineering, clever engineering, and they also did crazy things like all the four-wheel steer system as well, didn't they? Like,
yeah, on the preludes.
yeah,
it's just
unbelievable.
Beautiful.
You know, Honda, I think in the 80s and 90s were at their absolute peak. People are going to say, why are we putting the cut off at the 80s and 90s? And we do have to give a mention to the very early noughties, because of course Honda came up with the K20
and the F20
and the F20,
yeah,
which S2000 stone cold classic, probably the best two internal combustion engines currently in production, Chevy LS, Honda K20, because they are democratized, reliable power for everyone and capable of insane power outputs. So, in a nutshell, that's why from an engineering point of view, 80s and 90s Hondas were phenomenal.
Yeah.
But what we're going to give you now is a little bit of a graphic demonstration using two cars here. So, one is Rexy, your CRX.
Yeah.
You've owned Rexy for how many years?
8 years.
And how many hours have you owned Danny, the Honda Jazz, for?
27.
Yeah, there you go.
Almost an hour for every year it's been around. 22,900.
22,900 miles from new.
Yep.
Rexy here has had a complete bare metal rebuild by you.
Yep.
We'll put the Instagram here. There we go. You can see the whole build there, but should we go for a bit of a walk around on them?
Yay.
Would you like to see the cars more? Of course you would. Here we go.
So we are looking at a 1991 Honda CRX SIR. It's a Japanese import. Originally, this car and the VT model would have both had a B16A engine. So that means it's a B series engine.
Yep.
Means it's double overhead cam.
Yep.
Got VTEC.
VTEC!
16 means that it was a 1.6. The one that was in Rexy would have made 158 horsepower.
Crikey. So again,
So like 160 PS.
yeah, amazing, right?
And the UK version, because we have rubbish fuel, or we did over here at the time, would have made about 10 horsepower less.
So, obviously, this one's not standard anymore,
Not
is
really.
it? So go on, show us your engine, love.
Oh, I thought you'd know.
Oh, show us your engine, love. Go on.
So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll take it off the road and do a 6-month rebuild.
Are you ready, ladies and gents, and everybody? Because
It took a little bit longer than that, but only
I've
a little
heard
bit.
that you've got 100 grand under that bonnet. Don't race Johnny Tran.
Don't. It's not a spoon engine though.
It's not a spoon engine.
Might as well be. So after 7.5 years of parts finding and general obsessions, I finally got back on the road 2 months ago. My plan kind of evolved from just a refresh into I want to build not only my perfect CRX, but what I feel if Honda had gone, we want to redo the Mark II CRX in like 1999.
This is a B16B.
Also a B16B.
Which, again, for people who have no idea what that means, 1.6,
Yeah.
How many revs, how much BHP?
So from standard, they redline at about 8,600, 8,700, and they develop about 185 horsepower as standard, and that's not forced injection.
And that's just out of the box.
Yeah.
Also, look, naturally aspirated. It hasn't got a turbo.
Turbo?
There's no turbo here.
But this is one of the reasons I have such an affinity with Hondas of the 80s and 90s, and why I got into them so much, because I've had 50 odd miles per gallon out of one of these engines before in my old track car. And that was on the way to a hill climb.
Yeah.
You know, like, what? So, in the engine bay, we have Mishimoto radiator with rad hoses all round. We've got a Mk1 oil cooler, a Moroso baffled sump, aluminium sump down there, an S80 4.7 final drive gearbox that's had a full hydro conversion using an EF conversion from Australia, which is a beautiful piece of kit. Intake wise, I'm using a TEG Type R intake, spoon strut braces front and rear, a 1-inch master brake cylinder from a TEG. In there is a Toda flywheel with a stage 1 XZD clutch. Exhaust wise, I'm currently using a Mugen 4-to-1 manifold, and then the rest is an exhaust. I'm not entirely happy with it. Then moving to suspension, I am running Toda VTEC coilovers front and rear with hard race front upper adjustable camber arms, running the standard anti-roll bars front and rear, Boone 4-pot twin block calipers with 282mm discs and just some normal pads at the moment. As you may have seen, 5-stud conversion, true 5-stud conversion all round.
Not adapters.
Not adapters that I did myself. And at the rear, obviously also 5-stud, also the same Toda VTEC shocks, TEG Type R rear brakes, which are 262mm, and then adjustable toe and camber and you name it, it's adjustable. Okay. Onto bodywork, which I'm not a fan of massive body kits, but had to have a Mugen spoiler. This is a rep spoiler, which I don't usually do reps. I don't like reps, but there is good reason, and I do have an original Mugen spoiler at home, and it does have tap tap tap. That is an original Mugen badge, which is probably worth like 3 times what the spoiler cost me. So, but please don't steal it. I'll be disappointed and scared.
Please no.
Other exterior modifications are the flat EG Civic side repeaters, optional extra front fog lights and front lit. My Mugen Power Mugen Power bolts for holding my number plates on.
Do they have VTEC?
Yes, technically, yes.
Okay.
They're attached to the car has VTEC, it has VTEC.
I'm happy for you.
Thanks. Inside, I've kept it fairly standard looking, which is important to me. So I'm running a TEG Type R non-airbag steering wheel, which is my favourite steering wheel. Then I've got a Defi gauge for oil temperature, just so I can keep an eye on it. At the moment, I'm running my standard dials just while I'm still sorting everything out, but eventually I will have EK9 dials in there. TEG titanium shift lever, and then, you know, I had the seats retrimmed in so that, you know, they're full half leather with the burgundy stitching, just so it all looks, you know, nice and choice. That's my CRX.
This is a Honda Jazz. You may not recognise it as a Jazz. You might think a Jazz is another kind of car altogether. This was also sold in the rest of the world, and in Japan in particular, as a Honda City.
City in City!
And had a very amusing ad campaign with madness in.
Honda, 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 Honda.
So the story goes is that these were, in the UK at least, a complete sales flop. I certainly can't ever remember seeing these around as a kid. Danny here, which we've called a little Honda Jazz, tap tap tap, is a 1985 Honda Jazz. And so the story goes is that Honda brought in 600 of these, which took them the best part of 2 years to sell, and then they just gave up. As a result, this tiny little car is now probably rarer than a Bugatti Veyron. How many do we think are left?
About 20 in total, but I think 15 or 16 are still off the road.
Yeah, so this is probably one of about 6 roadworthy examples left. A friend of ours was selling this. Ratchet fell in love. I fell in love. Here we go, come and have a walk around. So firstly, you can see the super cute, look at the cute little froggy eyes. So the little Jazz, or as it was sold in the rest of the world, the Honda City, was a fun little tall boy. They called it tall boy styling city car. 2 big doors, but you can fit 4 adults in here, and was designed very much as like a super economy shopping car. But I've got to say, from driving it, I wondered if this would actually be up to the job. But it has a 5-speed gearbox. The engine makes 50-60 horsepower, and it weighs as much as a crisp packet. It's fantastic. It feels like a slightly bigger Mini to drive. It's absolutely brilliant. Retro chums, if you're with me, if you love a bit of cassette futurism, check out all of the straight lines and hard angles in this dashboard. There are secret storage compartments everywhere. Are you ready? Oh, look at this, look. And this comes down, and it's a special place for the jazz book. And then look, here's another little handy storage area for Duran Duran cassettes, I would think. It's a ashtray, another little storage box. Amazingly, glances over at the speedo, 23,000 miles from new. The sad story behind this is that this little car was bought brand new in 1985, used for a handful of years, and in fact we've found a penny in the car from 1988. So I would guess that's probably when it was taken off the road, and then parked up under a carport and completely forgotten when a scrap dealer came by to pick up the car to go for scrap. Thankfully, he realised that it was a lovely little car. Our friend Steph bought it off them, and Steph's got it back on the road, and now it's up to us to go the final distance with it.
Is it a spoon engine? Oh, it's 3 spoon. Oh, it's not.
It's not though.
Oh.
No, it isn't.
What is it? What that?
What am I meant to know about classic Honda engines?
What's that?
Honda E.
I did my car, you do this one.
What is
That's
it?
what you
Honda
wanted.
EE? Is it? Is this engine family? This could be a challenge for us. It's actually a really sweet engine. Why not use this as a daily driver? Like, it's economical, it's easy to park, it's cheap to insure, it's all the Honda values which are still there. The one potential downside we may have is parts sourcing. Because, yeah.
Well, strangely, for a car where there was only 600 brought into the country, getting parts is not so easy.
It is all easy to work on. There's nothing especially worrying about this car. It's just if we can get hold of the spares and parts for it. So if you do have a great source of parts for Mk1, Honda Jazz, Honda City, hit us up in the comments. We are going to need it, but we absolutely promise this car's going to stay on the road. I absolutely love little Danny Jazz here. I absolutely love.
You're quite
this
smitten,
little
aren't
car.
you?
I am. I absolutely love this little car. I really do. Danny Jazz here is going to be on the channel more, but what do you think we should do with old Danny here? If you could do anything to one of these little cars, what would you like to see happen? Pop us a comment down below, let us know, and it might just happen. Well, that about wraps up our little tribute to classic 80s and 90s Hondas. If you'd like to see more of this kind of nonsense, you'd like more of this Honda
I would
nonsense,
like
wouldn't you?
more Honda nonsense.
More Honda nonsense. Let us know in the comments below. Also, you can follow what we're up to. Please, please, please give us a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button. That would help us out tremendously. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, let us know in the comments. Let us know what you'd like to see on another episode of
Motorhouse.